Welcome back everyone. For today's video we are going to be taking a look at round number 3 of the Marshall Chess Club Labor Day Invitational. Now the famous YouTuber and aspiring grandmaster Levy Rozman is competing. He's off to a very tough start with losses in rounds 1 and 2, but in the third round he was playing once again with the white pieces against grandmaster Mark Pragwa from the Philippines. Now before we jump into the action, I want to give you guys a little bit of a story about Mark Pragwa. Now Mark Pragwa is about 1 or 2 years older than I am currently. Very strong player. He's someone that I actually played an in-person blitz all the way back in 1998 during the US Open in Hawaii. He's someone that I've known for many years. In recent times he's focused more on teaching chess as opposed to being a player. I believe that he lives in New York currently, so he's still very strong, but his focus is not necessarily on competing as much these days. At any rate, very strong player who Levy is going up. Levy is the white pieces. Let's jump right into the action. So the game starts out with the move c4 from Levy. Pragwa plays e6, we get knight c3, and now we have the move d5. Here Levy plays e3, we get the move knight to f6, and now Levy plays knight f3 once again. So Levy here is trying to avoid a lot of the main lines with these setups. He's played a lot of c4, knight c3, knight f3, e3, both in this tournament and his recent events. Now one thing that I would caution with this is it feels to me that when Levy tries to play a lot of sidelines against stronger players, he is not actually playing to his strengths. He's playing to the strength of his opponents, because at the end of the day, one of the things that's really important is you're very self-critical about what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are. And I feel like when Levy plays players who are lower rated, playing some of these lines that are a little bit off theory, things where players have to sort of create setups and play on the fly, definitely benefits him. But when he's playing players who are better than him simply by rating and by title, trying to outplay them from a position which is not theory in my opinion is a mistake, because what makes these players stronger than Levy? Generally the biggest advantages that grandmasters are going to have over international masters or even lower level is that their positional understanding and maneuvering, placing pieces on the right squares is something they do extremely well. So I'm not a huge fan of this opening choice against the top 2 players in this event in round 1 and now in round 3. At any rate, let's keep going. We get the move b6 here. Levy now decides to trade the pawns on d5, and he plays this move g3. Now much like his game against Jurek the other day, he's trying to go for the fianchetto with bishop d2, or bishop g2 I should say, while refraining from pushing the pawn to d4. We get bishop to d6, bishop g2, castles, and now we have the move rook e8. Here Levy plays the move rook e1, and now we get the move knight bd7, and Levy plays the move b3, intending to go for the classic double fianchetto with bishops on b2 and g2. In this position, Pragwa plays the move knight to c5, and this is a clear sign to me that Pragwa was ready for Levy's attempt to play this setup with the e3 and b3, because this is a move that you normally would not consider unless you know exactly what you're doing. Levy plays move d3 here. If he were to go d4, which is a logical move, now black will put the knight on e4, and after knight takes, black can go for queen f6. There's bishop g4 as well. There's a lot of pressure here in the center of the board, and there's even a move like bishop b4 looming as well due to the rook being on e1, and all these ideas give black a slight advantage here. So Levy plays the move d3, and now we get the move bishop a6, and Levy goes bishop f1 guarding the pawn on d3. Here Pragwa plays move knight to e6, and now Levy puts the bishop back on g2. Now to me this move is simply a lazy move from Levy. I think he was hoping that his opponent Mark Pragwa here would simply force a repetition and make a draw with knight c5 and bishop f1, but Pragwa is a fighter, and he is playing someone who's a little bit lower rated, probably feels like he should be okay here without too much risk, and therefore he decides to play the move rook c8. Levy goes bishop b2, and now we get the move c5, and here Levy plays the move rook c1. Now I'm not a fan of Levy's setup here, pushing the pawn to d3. As I mentioned in my recap from the first round game, I really think that a lot of setups with the pawn on d4 simply make more sense, and they're a little bit easier to play, because now in this position after rook c1 we get the move d4 from Pragwa. Now this move is a strong move because it creates a permanent weakness on d3. If you were to play, let's just say a move like knight f8 to illustrate the point, white can go d4 here, getting rid of the weakness, and now the pawn on d5 is actually a little bit weak as it can no longer push forward. So Pragwa plays the move d4, and now we get the move pawn takes pawn, and Levy goes knight e4. Here Pragwa takes knight, and now we get the move rook takes rook, queen takes, and here Levy plays rook takes knight. Now at this point a lot has simplified, a lot has happened. We have some trades here. The rooks are off the board, one set of knights are off the board. However, in this position it leads to very concrete play where either white has this weakness on d3 or issues on the diagonal, or white is going to win this pawn on d4. Now at this point the computer gives black a very small advantage, and Pragwa actually plays this in a very enterprising way. He plays bishop b7, Levy goes rook to e1, and now we get bishop b4, and Levy goes rook e2, and here we have this move queen to a8 being played, lining up the battery on the diagonal. So Levy goes knight h4, pretty much the only move here. Maybe you could go rook c2, but I think after knight g5 something really bad is happening. There's a big threat with rook to e1 check. You have a problem with the knight and the bishop on this diagonal, and it's looking really bad. So Levy goes knight h4, we got the swap of the juicers, and now the move rook c8 is played. A very logical move by Pragwa, trying to take advantage of this open c file. Additionally, this knight on g2 might look okay, but it's actually very awkwardly placed, as we're going to see in the game, because the knight can't really jump to f4, and black has ideas with knight g5 and knight h3 or knight f3 looming. So Levy goes rook to e5 here, and this is simply a bad move. What Levy should have played in this position is this move h4. Now I'm not going to critique Levy for not playing this move, because he probably was worried about something like queen to f3, and he thought the kingside pawns are very weak. But h4 is actually essential, because black can no longer move this knight to g5 and h3 or f3, as we're about to see in the game. After queen to f3, which is the best move here, white can simply play this move knight to f4, and if black were to chop the knight, you can play rook e8, sacking the rook, but creating the classic fossil. And after rook takes rook and queen takes queen, white wins the game. So Levy instead plays rook to e5, and now Pragwa correctly plays move bishop d6. We get rook to e2, and it's spaghetti-o time, as the move knight g5 is on the board, and suddenly Levy's king is extremely weak, as this knight is either going to f3 or h3. So Levy plays move h4 here. Worth noting, if white were to play like knight h4 or knight e1, both moves are possible. They run into knight to h3 check, king f1, and after queen to h1, your king gets checkmated on f1. So Levy plays h4, we get knight f3, king f1, and here we have the move bishop b4 being played by Pragwa. Now the computer doesn't love this move. It thinks that black should actually play something like h6 and g5, or maybe queen d5 right away without going bishop b4, because the bishop on d6 will always stop white from ever bringing the knight to f4. Instead, Pragwa plays bishop b4, Levy plays move a3. Now one big problem with this position as well is Levy is a little bit worse in the game, but he's also way down on the clock, so it's gonna be a very difficult situation for Levy heading into the home stretch of the game. Pragwa plays bishop c3, which is a move that I actually don't particularly like here. If I were playing, I probably would consider going back to d6 just to stop knight f4, and then looking to start pushing pawns on the king side. Instead, we got bishop c3. Levy goes bishop to c1, and now we have the move h6 being played by Pragwa, and Levy plays move rook e4. Pragwa goes f5, attacking the rook here so that white cannot capture this horse on f3. Levy goes rook e7, we get king f8, rook e6, king f7, and here Levy plays move knight f4. Now at this point, Levy is in a lot of trouble here. Knight f4 to me feels like very much of a desperation move. Computer says after rook to d6, white is apparently okay, because after king e7, you can swing the rook back to g6, and the game is still kind of imbalanced. But one thing that I've mentioned in 2 of my recaps already here is that one important thing is, what are the natural moves and what are you looking for? Rook to d6 might be the best move, but it is not very intuitive here. Also, because after rook d6, black can even potentially play rook e8, looking to attack on these dark squares like e1 or h2, and it just looks very bad optically. So Levy goes knight f4, and here Pragwa plays move g5, attacking the knight on f4, and if Levy were to move the knight after king takes e6, you sack the rook and you resign the game. So Levy goes queen e2 here, and now we get this move bishop b4. Now this is probably one of the most important points in the game here. I think Pragwa's time usage, spending 5 minutes to play this move bishop b4, was a serious mistake, as we'll see in the game, because at this point what you probably want to do is make a quick decision. Now when I say make a quick decision, what I would actually advocate doing here is going for the check, and then gaining 1 minute on the clock, using some time and then trying to figure it out, versus spending 5 minutes and playing bishop b4, because now you've lost 5 minutes and you really have to be precise in the position. That being said, bishop b4 is the best move here, and now Levy goes for the move bishop to b2. After bishop to b2, Pragwa plays move g takes f4, and now Levy takes the bishop on b4. Now at this point, it's very imbalanced, because Levy has an active queen and a rook. He's trying to checkmate the black king. On the other hand, there are all kinds of threats towards this diagonal, maybe a rook c1 down the road. It's very imbalanced here. Now one of the reasons that I thought Pragwa should have repeated, as you can tell from the time advantage has actually dwindled down here, where Pragwa only has 1 more minute. Now Pragwa spends quite a bit of time before playing this move queen d5, and this is actually a big mistake here. What Pragwa should have played was this move knight takes h4. Now keep in mind, As I've mentioned in my first two recaps, one of the very important things is what are the moves that are natural? How easy is it to find them when you have limited time on the clock? Now in this position, because the black king is so open on f7, it's a very difficult move to play. If I were playing this position with black, I would probably also consider the move knight to g5, and here the computer says after queen to h5, king e6, and pawn takes knight, queen covers the h1 square, bishop covers the c1 square, and probably white can draw the game. Now, do I think Levy would have found this? Very, very unclear if he would have found this idea, because rook to e7 is much more natural. Queen to h5 simply doesn't feel like it's in the spirit of the position. Perhaps he would have found it. Who knows? This didn't happen in the game, but knight g5 would have been very interesting. Now, the move that would have been winning here for Paragua is this move knight takes pawn on h4. Now the reason that this move is winning is because here if white goes rook to e7 and king to f8, you're threatening to checkmate on this h1 square. If white goes king g1, there will be a queen g2 checkmate, and the computer says the best that white can do here potentially is to play rook e4. Now the reason that I think Paragua rejected this knight takes h4 move is he probably got really scared of this move rook to f6 check, sacking the rook. But after rook to f6, Paragua can take the rook, and after bishop takes d4, you can go king to g6, queen e6 check, and you play this very nice move king to h5. Now the reason black is winning is that the pawn on f5 is guarded by the knight. If you try to check on e2, I can simply go queen to f3 since I have this extra rook on c8 here, and if you try to go queen f7 check, I go king g4, queen g7, and now the move king to h3, and you simply have no way to check this king on h3, and now black is infiltrating on c1 and h1, and the white king is getting checkmated in short order. Now, if Paragua had a lot of time here, I think there's a very, very good chance that he finds this move, knight takes h4. But because he spent so much time on the last couple of moves here, he sort of panics and he decides to play this move, queen to d5 instead. Now here Levy spends a bit of time before playing the move rook to e7, which is also a blunder. Now I don't fault Levy, as I've said, in these situations when the players are low on time, it's very easy to trust your instincts. You don't have all the time in the world to think, and for Levy here, he has to worry about knight d2, knight h2, rook c1, all these different ideas, knight h4, knight g5, with all these different knight moves and these checkmates towards the white king, you tend to trust your instincts, and he decides to play rook e7. Now the interesting thing is that I think if Levy were not on 0 out of 2, I think there's a good chance he might have spent 1.5 to 2 minutes here and tried to play the move rook takes h6, but because he's been doing so poorly, he's gotten really low on time in the first 2 games and it's cost him dearly. He decides to play this move rook e7 quickly on instinct. Now this is a mistake because after the move king to f6 is played, white suddenly has some serious issues once again, as you cannot check on f7 or e6, and the pawn on d4 is guarded. So Levy plays move rook h7, which is the only move in the position to keep the game going. Now one lucky thing for Levy here is that he has only moves. He does not have many options here. He either has to go rook to h7 or he has to go rook to a7. If you were to play, I don't know, a move like h5 just to illustrate the point, black can go knight e5 here, cutting off the queen and the rook, and if you move the rook, there's queen to h1 mate, and if you were to trade everything off here, for example, black is simply winning as the rook will go to c2 and capture this bishop on b2. So fortunately for Levy, he only has really one option to play rook h7. Rook takes a7 is also possible to consider, but after knight to e5, king g1, and rook to e8, black should be winning in this position. So after king f6, Levy plays rook h7. Paragua now plays move knight to e5, angling to create the checkmate on h1, and Levy goes king g1. Now here Paragua plays the move rook to e8. At this point, both players are down to seconds for every move. They are getting a 30-second increment with each move they play, but with such limited time, blunders are bound to happen. So after rook to e8, Levy plays the move rook takes h6, and here Paragua goes king g7. Now in this position, if you have time to think, I think there's a very high chance that Paragua would have played the winning move king to e7 here. The reason this move is winning for black is that if white were to take on f4, there's now rook to g8 checking the king, and after king h2, queen g2 is mate. If you go king f1, queen h1 is also checkmate, so you can't capture the pawn. Now the computer will tell you that queen to h5 is the best move, and if black plays king to d8, I think you have rook to h8, saving the game here, because after check you can simply go king to f1 and there's no rook e1 checkmate. But whether this would happen, I'm very, very skeptical. I don't think Levy would have found this queen h5 move in this position, and I think there's probably, I would say, like, I think in my opinion 90% chance he loses, because queen h5 I believe is literally the only move to keep the game going. And actually after queen to h5, there's even this move knight to f7 here, attacking the rook, and after rook h7, king d8, suddenly you're getting checkmated every which way. The king is super weak, and it's GG. Why not? However, Pragwa here plays the move king g7, and now Levy plays the move rook to h7. Now these last two moves Levy played with 1 or 2 seconds on the clock. Very shaky situation here, but he does find rook h7. Now again, as I've said in the first couple of games, this is a situation where Levy does not have options. He does not have multiple moves to play, so he's able to play this move rook h7 because there's nothing else that exists. If you were to go queen to h5 after knight to f3, if you go king g2, I have knight to e1 check, king h3, and then queen g2 is mate, as the king can't go out. And if you go king to f1, then I have rook to e1 check, king g2, knight takes h4, king h3, and I have queen to h1 checkmating the king once again. So Levy has no option, so he does play rook h7, and here Pragwa bails out and he takes a rook on h7. Now for Levy, this is a huge miracle this happens. I think, in my opinion, with Pragwa, because Levy had defended so well for so long and Pragwa was unable to find a win, he started getting tentative and being worried that he might make a blunder and lose the game because of Levy's resilience, and that's why he takes the rook. With more time, I think Pragwa probably goes king f6, rook h6, and king to e7, but in this situation he decides to take the rook. Here Levy plays move queen to h5, checking the king and attacking the rook, and after king g7 and queen takes e8, Levy has now survived the worst of it, because even though black can always go knight to f3, after king to f1 with only a queen and a knight and no other pieces to infiltrate on the diagonals or the files and the open black king, black can no longer win the game. So Pragwa plays knight takes d3, and now Levy makes a draw by repetition after check, and we end with a peaceful result. Now for Levy, this is a huge escape in this game. I cannot stress enough how in danger he was. Probably if Pragwa has more time, he wins this game. But on the other hand, what I like to say about chess is you get what you deserve. And I would like to say that in terms of the first two games, Levy lost the first two games. Do I think he should have lost them? I think the first game he deserved to lose. Second game, he ended up in a situation where he got too low on time and his opponent had all the easy moves and he wasn't able to survive. Now in this game, Levy got to a situation where he was low on time, but he had the easy moves and his opponent had the hard moves. And I think Levy's resilience to keep the game going as long as he did paid huge dividends, and he gets a miracle save. If he had lost this game, I think he would have started sliding off the hill. I don't know if that's actually the correct saying, but it would have gone downhill very quickly if he had started out 0 out of 3. But he gets the miracle draw, he survives in this game, and he now has half a point out of 3 as he goes into round number 4 tomorrow. So not the greatest start, but he survives, finally stops the bleeding with a draw in round number 3. We'll see how he can do tomorrow with the black pieces in round 4, but it is what it is. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the 3rd round of the Marshall Chess Club Labor Day Invitational. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and I'll be back tomorrow with some more great recaps, and we'll take it from there. So I'll see you guys soon. Have a great rest of your evening. Bye.